John Wick 4 was a super fun movie with a lot of cool choreography and interesting shots, and I would definitely recommend going to see it. But if I had to be objective about it, I would say it's an overall movie. It really reminds me of the 80s and 90s where you just kind of get mindless action for an hour and a half or 2 hours, or in this case, 2 hours and 45 minutes. As much as I've enjoyed John Wick 2, 3, and 4, it's pretty disappointing where how far we've come from the original. I won't give any spoilers because there's not really much to spoil with a movie like this. John Wick has to kill a bunch of guys. You know he's gonna. There are some pretty cool things that I thought they did. There's a whole fight scene where it's just a one shot from over the top. It looks like a video game. It's pretty crazy. There's a big fight scene in a traffic circle, which is really cool. But this also leads to where I want to get into more of my issues with the John Wick franchise, I guess, and kind of where it took off from 1 and how that compares to 4. So if you're here, like and subscribe and all that shit. Okay. John Wick 1 was just a revenge story. His dying wife bought him a puppy. These guys killed it. He killed them and everyone involved with them. Pretty straightforward. 2, 3, and 4 have been this thing where they're like, well, John, you can't escape this lifestyle. It's who you are. And like, yeah, in the first one, he's supposed to have left and not intended to come back. But 2, 3, and 4, it's just like, well, he's kind of there and he owes a debt to somebody, or he broke the rules or whatever. And the world building really falls apart as the series goes on. Something that I really liked about the first John Wick is that the entire world building is supposed to be, you have these underground assassins and they are really good at their job and they, get paid a ton of money to do what they do, but they also don't get seen by the public. Well, in 2, they try to play a little bit coy with it where they're like shooting at each other in public, but not really. And then they're fighting in a big crowd at a concert, but no one notices. It's not good. In 4, they pretty much just say, fuck it. Like at one point, John Wick walks out into the middle of the street and they all just start fighting each other and they're using traffic to try to kill each other and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I know it's supposed to be a fun action movie and you shouldn't put too much thought into it, but at the same time, it's like you have these presumably thousands or tens of thousands of assassins globally, and they fight in public pretty openly and just no one has an iPhone or streams on Facebook or whatever. So that whole part of the world building where it's like this underground thing is just obliterated after the first movie. In the second one, they make a big deal out of the end of that because he shoots a guy at the Continental. And then in 3 and 4, it's like, yeah, we'll fight the Continental anyway. We'll fight wherever we want. So there's a lot of that kind of shit. And then one of my least favorite things that they did was in the first movie, he has like a special suit and he can get shot, but when he gets shot, he feels it. Like he doesn't want to get shot. In this movie, and maybe in 3, I don't remember, but in 4 in particular, they literally just lift up their jacket and it's bulletproof. So like you're watching all these guys fight with flaps of bulletproof cloth in front of them. It's almost like you're in a Halo game. Or it's like a bunch of Iron Men without helmets fighting. Because they're all just shooting at each other from point blank range. The bad guys react to the bullets. John Wick doesn't really. And to me, this is like as dumb as if Batman's cape was just blocking bullets. Like he uses his cape to hide where he's at, not to just stop bullets with a flappy piece of cloth. And I don't really care what the technology is. It's absurd. In the first movie, there's a scene where he goes into a club and starts shooting people. And as soon as he starts shooting, everyone runs out and is like, freak the fuck out, which is what you would imagine. And then they have their big shootout and whatever. In 2, 3, 4, they just fight in clubs. This isn't really a spoiler, it's really vague. But they're fighting in a club and they're throwing axes at people and like killing each other. And everyone just keeps dancing and they're just kind of hanging out. And then at the very end of the scene, when they need to blend into the crowd, then everyone's trying to run away. Before that, it's just shootout in a club. Everyone just keeps dancing. And this has gotten just progressively worse as the movies go on. And then another thing that they've done is essentially make him invincible. Like in the first one, when he gets shot in his vest, he like falls over a balcony and he's just like thud on the ground. And then he limps away because he's like messed up. And that was only from one floor down to the next, which is, you know, a serious fall in real life. In John Wick 3, I think it is, he gets hit by a car and just keeps fighting. And in 4, he gets hit by like 4 or 5 cars in one scene and just keeps fighting. And he has 2 falls, one that's probably 30 feet, and then one that's probably, I think it's the 4th or 5th floor window. He just falls and gets up. I mean, he's hurt, but he's kind of inhuman at that point. And what it reminds me of is sort of what the Die Hard series did, where like Die Hard 1 was really good because Bruce Willis was just a guy who got stuck in a situation and works his way out of it. You know, it's a big deal when he's walking on glass barefoot and all that. And then as the movies go on, he's riding motorcycles and off ramps into helicopters. And that's sort of what we're seeing with John Wick. The first movie, he's just a guy who wants revenge because he's pissed off about some guys killing his puppy from his dead wife. And then as the movies go on, his personality is just, I kill stuff. And he just gets more and more superhuman. And also, I don't know for sure. I had to go back and watch the first one. I'm just recording this right after I watched the movie, so I can't say for sure. But in the first one, I think with the choreography, a lot of times he's not fighting as many guys. And because he's not invincible, he's using the guys as shields and he's only taking on one at a time. So you don't really have any points where there's just a guy standing there who could shoot him and he's just waiting for his turn to get punched in the face. And I would bet if I were to rewatch 4 and like slow down all the fight scenes, that there would be quite a bit of that from what I saw in the theater of he's doing like an elaborate move to beat up one guy and there's a guy standing behind him with a gun who's just waiting to get beat up. And then they engage once John Wick is ready. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but it looks like it's the case to me. And that's probably because he's fighting so many guys at one time. And now he's invincible except for headshots. So that's just kind of how it goes, I guess. The actors were all good, obviously. You had Donnie Yen, the guy who's always the cool Japanese guy whose name I can't remember right now. You had the manager, or Winston. Winston kind of looked like his dentures were falling out and he was having a hard time talking, to be honest. And also something John Wick 4 did that I don't really understand. I don't think this makes any sense. Maybe someone can explain it. But Donnie Yen is blind. And I was like, okay, he's blind, but he's like Daredevil. Because in this world, it's, you know, you have flexibility. But then he's like struggling to walk around with a cane. And he's like poking at the walls and stuff to see where he's at. He goes to reach for a drink, he misses. But then he's engaging in these like big elaborate firefights. And it's like, well, which is it? Is he a blind guy or is he Daredevil? And they kind of did both, which I didn't really make any sense. I didn't understand that choice. Like in the beginning, there's a really cool thing that he does, and this is a minor spoiler, but this is early in the movie, and it doesn't really affect the plot. He's slapping these things on the wall as he walks around. And you're like, what's he doing? And then he goes and hides. And then when people walk by him, they make a noise, and he jumps up and shoots, which is a cool thing to do. But then the problem is, after that, he's in a shootout with John Wick in this room where there's all kinds of shit going on. And it's like, okay, well, the guy who just had to locate people using doorbells is now fighting John Wick, who is supposed to be the best one in this world, killing, at this point, thousands of people, I'm assuming. I just didn't really understand that decision. Like, if you want him to be blind and badass, then just don't try to explain it. Like, let him just do his thing. And maybe he has better hearing because he's blind. But you don't have to, like, try to make some stuff where he's blind, like routine stuff. And then when he's in a firefight, he's just popping off headshots. I didn't really understand that at all. But yeah, they did a lot of really cool stuff in this movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, like I said, but a lot of the choreography I thought was good. You know, there's nunchucks and axes and all kinds of weapons get involved. You see some cool new guns, a couple really cool camera shots. I thought there was a lot of creativity to the fights. It just feels like a missed opportunity to me, because if you take away the bulletproof suits and just enhance the choreography a bit, or maybe get rid of some of the bad guys, you know, so you don't just have guys standing there smoking a joint while they're waiting to get shot, and you just do something with this character, instead of being like, objectively it's like a 5, but it could easily be like a 9 if you just gave him any character and tighten up the choreography a bit. And choreography is not something I'm usually particular about, but when your movie is supposed to be known as like the movie for the gun fu shit, and you know, Keanu does all the tactical training and the jujitsu, I feel like the choreography should be tight. I mean, they're all really fun movies, and I'd prefer if every single movie was like this than what we're getting out of Marvel and DC and Star Wars, which is nothing. I just wish they would, you know, kind of finish the job, I guess, with a good movie. Because John Wick's character in 2, 3, and 4 has literally just been, well, we're going to make you fight. You don't want to give up this lifestyle anyway. And then Keanu Reeves is like, yeah, I don't. And then he kills a bunch of people. They could try to do something to give him some semblance of struggling to move on, or wanting to go live at home and just think about his wife or something. I mean, I guess they kind of do in 2, they blow up his house and shit, but I kind of want to remember how many people at this point even realized that was the starting point of this journey, was revenge for his dead wife. It just feels like we've gotten so far from that it's like a different franchise now. Whatever. Overall, it's fun. I'd say go see it. Enjoy the fights. I mean, there's not much else to say. Yeah, I think that's about it for me. All right. Thanks. See ya.